Hey everybody, it's Kevin Cox and welcome to Midlife Crisis Jiu-Jitsu. Hope you're doing well. So in today's video, I want to talk to you about supplemental training for Jiu-Jitsu. There's always a lot of questions around, strength training or just conditioning in general, outside of your Jiu-Jitsu training. So now my career, I've actually worked for over 20 years working as a strength conditioning coach. So this is an area where I have a lot of expertise in it. So jiu-jitsu, I'm still learning. But now here's an important element. A lot of people are always, when they talk about the training, especially for strength training, various conditioning, they always just kind of throw, well, what's the best exercise? Should I, be doing whatever, some program. Should I do CrossFit? Should I do starting strength? Should I do or Jim Weeder's 5-3-1? Should I use kettlebells? What's best? And what's important to realize is all those things are they're simple modalities. And one's not necessarily right or wrong, and there's not one perfect program for anything. That's just the truth and the reality. And one of the reality is virtually anything will work for a certain period of time. But one thing that I think a lot of people are always missing out on is thinking about it's like, what do you actually need to be training? What do you actually need to do to improve? So it's like, jiu-jitsu is obviously very demanding. And, and if you love it, you want to be on the mat as much as possible. And it can be, that can drain a lot of your physical resources. And we only have a limited amount of resources, whether it be physical or just time, things like that. Because if you're a midlife guy, you got a job, you've got, probably family, just all these other responsibilities going on. So you want to be as efficient as possible as you can with your training. So what I want to share with you in this video is a way to think about your training and a way to prioritize things in your training. So, and I'll use myself as an example. So once I started in jiu-jitsu, this was I started training like a little over a year ago. And so, and even though my profession was working as a trainer and, working in strength conditioning, my conditioning was shit. I literally had not done anything for at least like 10 years. It's like, I'd gotten married when I was early 30s. Then my wife, we both, we had our daughters kind of boom, boom, back to back. So, and just was busy with work and just going through life. And I was bored of just training, like going in, lifting weights, doing that kind of stuff. And, I just didn't have the vanity, that desire that I had like in my 20s and earlier where I'm like, oh yeah, I want a six pack, it's like, man, I don't really give a shit, anymore about that. So I literally had lost motivation for training. Now, fast forward, getting into jiu-jitsu, I really, was always fascinated with jiu-jitsu, always wanted to do it. So I'm like, man, I got to start this now or I'm just never going to do it. So once I started in jiu-jitsu, then some things popped out to me real quick. One, just my overall conditioning was poor, but then I realized how bad a lot of my mobility had gotten. Because I've got, one, just as we age, we lose mobility if we're not working on it. But then just for myself, I had just some old injuries, kind of some shoulder issue from rugby, but then also a really pretty severe chronic back issues from a car wreck that I had when I was like 18 years old that really, has just plagued me for a long time. The stuff is just chronic in there. And so, and due to a lot of my laziness and my, my inactivity, that stuff had gotten kind of worse. And so my hips literally were like in concrete, man, just like tight, and my lower back. So the point of this is, now for me, my strength levels had always, I just have good natural strength. And part of it, I think, is just from growing up as a kid on a farm, but then also just being involved in sports when I was younger of like, strength training was it. So I've always had like a good natural just base of strength. So what you want to do, and what I had to start prioritizing was when I started thinking of my training, I didn't think of like, all right, I just need to hit the gym, start hitting weights. And I do this with all my clients, and you should think about this in your way. Like, what are the qualities? What are the elements that I need to train the most? What needs the biggest priority? So for me, priority number one was obviously jujitsu, the technique, the skill development of jujitsu, because I had like no clue what I was doing in jujitsu. You know, I wrestled as a kid, so I had like just a little bit, but that was like over 20 something years ago. So, but I still had a little bit of just like the base of like, okay, I can, you know, I understand kind of some of the movements, but I had no clue of anything around jujitsu, and then really how to use my body in the way that you do in jiu-jitsu. So trying to learn that and do that, priority number one. Now that also ran into another element where I was lacking big time was my mobility. And so when I was thinking of setting up training, you know, where a lot of guys would be like, man, I'm just going to go start hitting the weights, doing these things. I literally just put any kind of strength training on the back burner. And so I literally might only do any strength training like once, maybe twice a week max, because that is not a deficit for me. I'm not, when I'm rolling, no one's overpowering me. I'm not, you know, just where I'm like, man, I just can't, you know, physically, you know, fend somebody off or just getting overpowered with something in here. But where I would really lack was my ability to move efficiently. And so especially if it was like, you know, going with younger guys and stuff like that, that ability to move efficiently really left me struggling and kind of behind. So as you're going through your training, prioritize like what needs the most work, and then you can make more time for what really needs to be done. You know, if you're someone like, well, I'm just wanting to lose weight, I'm wanting to do this, that could also come just from the jiu-jitsu training and training around and changing up your nutrition. So you may not have to worry about all this extra conditioning. And that's another thing around conditioning. Some people will think, well, I've got to go do X, Y, and Z. If your sport, if the activity will bring up your conditioning, don't worry about doing all this other stuff outside of it. It's like, for me, I don't do any other conditioning outside of jiu-jitsu, because it's jiu-jitsu. the specific demands of jiu-jitsu will take care of itself just by doing the activity. And now I had a period in my training over the last few months where just time constraints, things like that, I was only getting in like 1 to 2 sessions a week, you know, of jiu-jitsu. So then I amped up just some supplementary conditioning outside of that. And what I found was, you know, where I said before that my desire and, you know, to train and stuff was not there. Once I got into jiu-jitsu, my motivation to train was much higher, because I had a specific purpose of why I wanted to train. I know all these things that I'm doing will help improve my jiu-jitsu, because I want to be better at jiu-jitsu, you know. And then the aesthetic stuff, all that kind of stuff will take place, you know, as well as you're training for the performance of what you're trying to improve with jiu-jitsu. And I'm going to share with you in another video just some simple tests that will tell you, what do I need to be training for? What physical qualities are lacking? Are you someone that needs to be training to develop, you know, more strength? Or is your power lacking? Which is, you know, your reactive qualities, things like that. It's like, how do you actually know which one of those qualities need to be trained? And there's some very simple tests that you can do. Doesn't matter, you know, you don't need a ton of equipment or any of this stuff or anything fancy to do it. Very simple tests that will tell you what qualities you need to focus on in your training. And so use those, and then you can be much more efficient in your overall training, and you can actually know, hey, these are the things that are lacking. This is what I need to focus on for right now. Okay, so just a little food for thought for you of how to start thinking about your training instead of just jumping in. Well, I need a program. Think about the why and how you're going to do it, and why you need to be doing a certain modality of training. Okay, so that's it for today. I'm Kevin from Midlife Crisis Jiu-Jitsu. Hope you found this helpful, and make sure you subscribe to the channel if you are enjoying the videos and the interviews and stuff that we're sharing. So hope to catch you soon. Take care.